What is going on YouTube? Today we are doing a meal prep video. This isn't my first one, but it will be my best one. So without further ado, let's get into it. For this week's meal prep, I'm going to be doing 2 meals over the course of 5 days, which will add up to 10 total meals. So I'm going to do a breakdown of what those 2 meals will be. The first one will be a nice red beef. I'm going to thinly slice it up, and I'm going to go ahead and pair that with some rice as well as some steamed vegetables. Today's steamed vegetables are going to be cauliflower as well as broccoli. And to make sure that I add a little bit of spice and a little bit of kick to this, I'm going to use the same sauce that I did for that spicy garlic noodle video, link up here. And I'm going to use that to mix in with the beef so that way it's not plain, dry, and boring. And for meal number 2, we're going to go ahead and do a nice little pasta dish with ground bison as well as some diced up bell peppers, mix it into the sauce, have a nice little pasta dish. So it'll be meal number 1 will probably be the red beef, and meal number 2 being that pasta dish because I've been working out in the afternoons and I want to have those nice carbs to go ahead and complement my workouts. For my steak meal, I'm going to go ahead and use 8 ounces of rice as well as 6 ounces of red beef, and of course a cup or 2 of the steamed vegetables. I'm not going to be too particular with the steamed vegetables. These are microwavable. Some people frown upon that, but I personally think it's easy, convenient, and makes things sustainable. And that'll be the measurements for meal number 1. For meal number 2, we'll go ahead and use 4 ounces of protein pasta as well as 4 ounces of our ground bison, and we'll divide the sauce into 5. So that way I'm able to still track everything without having to get down to the nuances of the actual per gram serving. Although my personal pasta sauce, 1 serving is going to be about 126 grams. It's really easy. It's basically just canned pasta sauce with diced up bell peppers in it. And before I get into any of the actual cooking, I'm going to go ahead and start boiling some water as well as getting the rice ready. And once that pasta does start cooking up, I'm going to go ahead and get my proteins ready. So I'll start with my red beef, and I'll slice that up into nice thin pieces, so that way it's easier for me to measure and kind of weigh out and everything, and that way it'll also cook quicker. So that'll be my first step for my proteins. Then of course we'll go ahead and cook our bison. That's going to be a little bit quicker, but I'll still be sure to cook it perfectly, season it a little bit, and we'll kind of just throw in some random seasons to make sure that I'm getting enough sodium as I'm going in for my workouts. Once all those proteins are cooked, I'm going to go ahead and begin on the vegetables. This will be my next starting point, and that'll just consist of basically chopping up the bell peppers and making sure that they're diced so that way I can throw them into the red sauce. And while I'm dicing up my peppers, I'll be sure to put the sauce on the stovetop, warm it up a little bit, stir it, maybe add some season, but I think I'm just going to rely on the ground beef to season most of this dish. And that'll kind of consist of, just letting things happen as they may. So I'll go ahead and begin on chopping up those bell peppers and making sure that they're ready for the sauce. And while all of that's going on, I'll also be sure to make sure that my vegetables are in the microwave steaming. Again, some people prefer the regular traditional route, steaming their broccoli and cauliflower and all of that good stuff. And no harm, no foul, of course, but I prefer the quick, easy way, as I said before. This is a convenience thing for me, so I'm not going to be too particular about how my vegetables are cooked or if they're in a bag whenever they're getting cooked versus in a pot. At the end of the day, it tastes relatively similar to me, so I'm just going to stick to what works for me. To start with the rice, I'm going to go ahead and use 3 cups of dry rice, and I'll add the water. Now, I'm using 3 cups because I know that even though it might not make exactly 8 ounces for my 5 meals, it might even be a little bit of overkill. At least I'll have a little bit extra to use throughout the week, particularly on those first 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, where your week's kind of just kicking off and you're starting to get into the rhythm of things. And of course, this will add a convenience factor for dinner as well as my lunches. Now as for my pasta, I'm probably going to do the same thing and add about 3 cups, maybe 2.5, kind of depends. But 1 serving is about 2 ounces. I'm going to be doing 2 servings, as I said before, using 4 ounces of pasta along with 4 ounces of the ground bison. Alright, so the rice is cooking and the water is boiling, so my carbs are essentially taken care of for the time being, of course. And I'm going to go ahead and begin on that red meat and start slicing it up nice and thin. Alright, so my rice is boiling, my water's boiling, and my beef is finally cut up. You can probably hear the nice little sizzle of the rice in the background. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my pasta into that boiling water and begin cooking our proteins. But first, I wanna make sure that my pans are nice and preheated, so that way the temperature stays consistent throughout, and I can go ahead and make sure that my meat is cooking at a consistent rate. And of course, in true fitness influencer fashion, I'm gonna go ahead and use non-stick spray, making sure that every single nutritionist out there has a frown on their face. For the last few minutes, I went ahead and I diced up my bell peppers, and they're looking good, and all of my proteins are complete. So we're gonna finish this thing off by cooking some sauces. You can probably hear the microwave running in the background, and that's my steamed vegetables cooking as we speak. So let's finish this thing up. Like most things on this channel, the sauce is really simple. I just went ahead and dumped 1 can of the Hunt's tomato paste in there, or tomato sauce, and I added my bell peppers to that, and we're just gonna stir it around until it gets a nice little simmer, and add that to our pasta and our ground bison. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this nice little steak sauce that I'm concocting over here. I'm gonna add that to the pan, let it heat so that way, you know, it gets into the steak and gets nice and juicy. And I'm gonna use some arrowroot so that way it's really binding to the steak, and that way I have a nice good bit of flavor along with that steak and rice meal. Alright, meal number 1 is done. Hannah over here is eating ice cream. So, I'm finished with meal number 1. Pre-workout meal is complete. Technically it's meal number 2, but whatever, we won't get into that. So I'm gonna make the sauce, get everything measured out, and put into Tupperware containers, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Alright, that beef meal is finally done, so I'm gonna go ahead and package all of that up. I'm happy to say meal prep this week is over. But before we go, a couple things to keep in mind. First one, the meat, at least the steak here, does shrink down, so be sure to measure that out before you put it on the pan. Make sure that you have enough for 6 ounces every single day before you cook it. Typically, the labels are, you know, projecting the calories for the actual meat that you're getting ready to cook, not after it's cooked. So it might shrink a little bit after you cook all of your food. So just be mindful of how you're measuring all of your calories. And the second thing, of course, is gonna be that, yes, I meal prepped for 5 days a week. Now, I don't recommend this for everyone. The food doesn't taste great after about day 3 for most people. I'm not a picky eater. This is an easy, sustainable thing for me personally, but you may not enjoy it if you were meal prepping, you know, 5 times a week. Instead, try to do like 2 or 3 days. So, I don't know, just something to think about. You'll still save time, you'll still save money, but, you know, you'll also still enjoy what you're eating. So, take this whole entire 5 days worth of meal prep with a grain of salt, as opposed to, you know, trying to strictly stick to that, because you don't want to burn yourself out. With that said, if you made it this far in the video, just know that I really appreciate you. Please be sure to comment, like, and subscribe down below. And of course, I post every single Monday, so be sure to turn on those bell notifications so that way you're, you know, up to date with all the new videos that I'm putting out. And yeah, I will see you all in the next one.